DreAllDay.com.
Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one framework, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, several books, several shows. And this daily masterclass comes out, yes, daily, every single day. You don't believe me? It is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to play your game. Whatever your game happens to be, how do you make sure you stay focused on playing your game and don't get caught up in playing somebody else's game? That's the topic here today. Now, before I get into that, let me inform everybody. I send out a daily motivation text every single morning to everyone who is in my texting community, completely free of charge. And the way to get that daily motivation text, if you want it, is to send me a quick text right now to say hello at 305-384-6894. Once you text me there, we'll confirm that you are actually you. Make sure you're not lying to us. And then once you're in there every day, when I send out my daily motivation text, it's going to go straight to you, straight to your phone. Just something to keep you focused, motivated, sharp, on point every single day. So again, that number is also down below in the show notes. So this topic here today, how to play your game. In the world that we live in today, especially today, I mean, it was like this 10, 20, 30 years ago, but is even more like this now. And I think it will be even more like this in the future, is we are very easily distracted by looking at everybody else's game, what everybody else is doing. Because on our phones, if you look at your phone right now, just look at the home screen of your phone and look at all those apps that you have there. I don't care if we're talking the phone app, any type of messaging app, any social media app, any communication platform like email or something like that. How many apps just on the home screen that you can see right now on your phone are all based on, as soon as you open it, you're seeing everybody else's agenda. You're seeing what somebody else does. Like, for example, look at the home screen of my phone right now. I see Gmail. If I open Gmail, what am I getting? A bunch of emails that are usually about what somebody else is doing. Every email is somebody else's problem, agenda, question, something that they're doing, right? That's what email is. Somebody tells you what they got going on. If I open Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, what's on those three apps? Something that somebody else posted that I'm going to read or watch or listen to or engage with or respond to. I have texting app. What's in the text? Something that somebody else wants to say to me. My phone app. What is that? Somebody calling me because they have something that they want to say. So if you think about it, on our phones, and since our phones are within arm's reach of us at all times, and everybody has at least one of them, these objects usually are giving us a window into everybody else's game. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, because listen, the podcast app lets you listen to the Work on Your Game show. And right now I'm telling you some game. Now, I came up with this game, but I'm really giving you the game. Now, I'm an exception. Most people are just talking about their own selves. I'm giving you some game for yourself. So I'm a little bit different than everybody else. But the point is, it's very easy for us to get distracted by looking at what everybody else is doing or what somebody else is saying or thinking or feeling, or at least claiming to think or feel. And that distracts us from focusing on what we can focus on, which is ourselves. And the challenge with all of this being that human beings are still limited and that we can only focus on one thing at a time. So today we're going to talk about how you can play your game and only play your game and not get sidetracked and looking at everything other than the main focus, which is number one, which is you. Point number one, the topic once again, is how to play your game. Have a strategy in place and follow it. This is a simple point, but it's an often overlooked point, and is one that is, to the detriment of many people, often neglected. Is that many people are out in the world right now. Some of you who are listening to me right now are guilty of this. You're out in the world and you're working hard. You're showing up every day. You're doing the things that you believe you're supposed to be doing. The problem is you don't have a strategy. You don't have a plan. You are just randomly doing things. You are grinding blindly, as I like to say. So you're grinding, you're working hard, but there's no strategy. There's no plan in place. You're just doing stuff, and hopefully it works out. Maybe it will work out. It would actually hurt you if it works out, because then you're going to think you can just keep doing that, and it's going to keep working until you get to the point that it doesn't, because you don't have a strategy in place, and there's nothing to follow because there's no strategy. In episode 1921, I explained to you the 3-step framework of achievement. That was mindset, then strategy, then tactics. So when you have a strategy that you can follow, assuming that your mindset's in the right place, if it's not, then I would suggest you read some of my books. Start with the Mirror of Motivation, which you can get at mirrorofmotivation.com. Then read the Third Day, which you can get at thirddaybook.com. And at either one of those, make sure you check the box and get the Bulletproof Bundle and read those other 3 books as well. But anyway, when you have a strategy in place and you are following it, you are less prone to falling guilty to shiny information syndrome. This is one that I just came up with. Now, we all know about shiny object syndrome, right? Now we gotta talk about shiny information syndrome, because not too long ago, I was talking to a business colleague of mine. We do some work together. And she had consumed something that somebody else had did. Somebody had did something and they launched this product and that product and they made X number of dollars and they made it look so easy and sound so easy, and they put a whole framework out and told everybody step by step exactly what they did and how they did it. And she was apparently very excited by this, which is that person, whoever that was, they did a great job of selling it because she was sold on whatever this thing was. And she was telling me all about it and how this person did it and how, look, all we got to do is this, like 8 steps that need to be followed, and how it sounded so easy and so simple and how anybody could do it. And unfortunately, not really, but kind of unfortunately for her, I had to throw some cold water on her heated up idea. And I explained to her that if we were to follow what this guy had put out, I had never heard of this individual, by the way. I do believe, like, if he said he made this much money and he had this much success in doing things his way, I believe him. The problem was, as I explained to my business colleague, if we're gonna go follow this guy because he made this much and he got this success, well, what are we gonna do the next time somebody comes out and says, well, they made this much doing this and there's a little bit more money? And then what about the next person who made a little bit more than that? And what about the next person who made 10 times all of those people put together? And what about the next person? And what about the next one and next one, next one? The problem is, if you're running and changing your strategy and your plan and your program every time you hear about someone else who did it or is doing it maybe a little bit better than you, apparently, then you'll never get started. And actually, maybe you'll get started, but you'll never get finished, because you won't be able to complete working one program before you hear about another program that might be even better than that. So I call this shiny information syndrome. And a lot of people are falling victim to this these days because there's a lot of information out there, some of it useful, some of it not. And let's just assume that all of it's great. The problem is you can't follow everybody's information at the same time. It's impossible. Again, human beings still have a limitation. We can only focus on one thing at a time. So when you already have your own plan in place to follow, you aren't looking around at as much at what everybody else has going on. And this is a hack. This is a strategy hack. It is a mindset hack. It is a focus and attention hack. It's also an energy hack, because the less time that you're spending focusing on everybody else's shit, you can focus more time on your own shit, whatever your shit happens to be. And when your plans are sound and being executed on, then doesn't mean that you put on blinders and you ignore other people. Doesn't mean you can't listen to what somebody else has to say. Doesn't mean you can't read somebody else's article. Doesn't mean you can't even appreciate if someone else did something and it's working for them and they're getting great results. You can look at it, listen to it, consume it, and even appreciate what they did. Maybe even steal a couple nuggets and tidbits that you could use on your own. You can appreciate it, but at the same time, you don't feel like you need to go do exactly what they did because theirs worked so well. All right, this is what happens when you're not committed to your thing, is that you are easily persuaded and led in the direction of going on somebody else's thing. It's kind of like if you're in a relationship and you're happy with the person that you're with, you can see another attractive person, but you don't feel like you need to go leave your partner and go be with that person. You can look and say, all right, that guy is cute or that girl is attractive, but you're still happy with the guy or girl that you're with. So even though you can appreciate the beauty of that other person, it doesn't mean you're contemplating throwing everything away with this person to go get with that person who just walked by at Starbucks. Now, you're not about to leave your partner to chase the next thing. But if you're not all the way in, then maybe you would. Maybe you start thinking about it. Maybe the grass is greener over there. Maybe I need to go do this. Maybe I need to leave what I'm doing and go do something different. This is why you got to have a strategy and a plan in place. And this is exactly what I help people with in my 3rd Day Mastermind. It's the only place that I offer direct coaching, is helping people make sure that you have your own plans in place, so that when you see other people's plans, you don't go abandoning your own stuff every time you see somebody else's. And again, how many people are telling you what they have going on these days? Everybody is. So how could you possibly follow? How could you even stay with anything long enough to see it through to the end? You couldn't, if you're jumping from thing to thing. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to play your game. Point number 2, stay on message. And staying on message is not just about being a public figure or a politician or some type of public speaker. When I say stay on message, or being a brand builder or an influencer, staying on message means knowing what your strategy is and how you need to execute to get certain things done based on your plan, even when there are other things going on and trying to distract you and pull you off of your plan. You stay focused on the main thing, even while these other things are going on. I'll give you an example. Michael Jordan, who I talked about in episode 1217, Virtual Mentors episode, he would talk about that in his playing days. He would speak on how, because Michael Jordan was a big trash talker. He was the kind of guy who would talk trash to people during the games. And Michael Jordan was so good, they got to the point that some players would warn their teammates, or even coaches would tell their players, don't talk trash to Michael Jordan, because he was so good that if you talk trash to him, his game would actually go up, and it would hurt the other team's chances of beating the Bulls if you talk trash to Michael Jordan. But there were still plenty of players who would get involved and engage and talk trash with Mike. And when he was asked about it, Michael Jordan would say, see, the thing about my trash talk is I can talk trash to the opponent while I'm talking to them, I can keep playing within the team construct. I don't turn it into a one-on-one game between me and that other guy. But, as Mike went on to explain, he said many of my opponents, when they would talk trash to me, they would lose their sense of what they needed to do for their team, and they would start focusing so much on, I got to beat Michael Jordan, I got to shut Mike up because he's talking trash to me, that they would stop doing what the team needed them to do. They would stop following the overall team concept, and they would start just focusing on Michael Jordan, which would mess up the team overall, and thus give Michael and the Bulls a better chance of actually winning the game, which is the object of playing in the first place. So Mike had this ability to get other people to get off their game while at the same time staying on his own game. That's what I mean by staying on message, is knowing what your game is, and even while everything else is going on, whether you decide to engage or not, you still stay focused on your thing, whatever it's going to be. I'll give you another example of someone using this kind of against people. When former President Trump was president, what would he do all the time? We all know about it. If you followed him on Twitter, which everybody knew about what he was doing on Twitter, even if you didn't follow him, he would personalize his attacks on people. And he would draw attention to people who most of us had never even heard of until he had made them popular by talking trash. He would take some media reporter who had 30,000 followers or some random person who nobody ever heard of, and he would personally attack them using their names for whatever reason, because they said something or did something that he didn't like, and he would make them into household names just by attacking them. I think a better plan, had former President Trump had asked me for advice, a better plan would have been to leave those people anonymous. He could get mad at them and not like them, but don't personalize it and put their name out there, because now all you're doing is kind of, for the people who hated him, you're making a hero of those people because Trump attacked you. All right, now we're going to raise you up as a hero because we don't like him. Now, apparently, you probably don't like him either because he just personally attacked you. And if he needed to respond to a person, generalize the reply rather than making it personal and turning that person into a martyr because the president attacked them on social media. So that was a little bit of bad strategy by former President Trump by personalizing things, because it was kind of taken away from the overall message of whatever he was probably working on that day, which had nothing to do with this individual person who he was attacking. Now, conversely, let me give you a good example of doing this. A person who is high status, and maybe they got attacked by somebody who is much lower status, but they handled it in a way that was much more strategic, that allowed them to stay on message, as opposed to Trump, who would kind of get off message and start attacking random people for no reason. Jay-Z. Now, Jay-Z is pretty known. I don't know if he's as known as Donald Trump. Probably not. Maybe close. I don't know. That's an interesting case study for someone who wants to do the work. But Jay-Z, during the heyday of his rap career, now he's a little bit not as active in rapping, but in the heyday of his rap career, Jay-Z would get attacked by everybody. All kinds of rappers came at him from different angles at different times all the time, simply because he was the biggest thing and the biggest name in rap music. But very rarely, there were a few exceptions, but very rarely would Jay-Z give direct attention to anybody who was attacking him amongst other rappers. He would respond to the rappers who were dissing him, but he would diss them back. he would respond to them as a whole. He would kind of generalize his response, and very rarely would he personalize the response. There were a few times when he would personalize his response. There are a few people he might throw one line at them, or there were a few, actually one memorable back and forth was him and a rapper by the name of Nas. They did a whole back and forth making songs about each other. But a lot of the other rappers who would diss Jay-Z, he might mention them in one line of a song or maybe one verse of a record that he put out, and then he just wouldn't diss them anymore. He wouldn't say anything else about them. He would just leave it at that and let those people go be swinging at him, but they'd be swinging at air because he wasn't punching back. So he would leave a lot of the people who tried to attack him, they tried to gain notoriety by attacking him, he would leave them as nobodies. He would leave them to their nothingness by not giving them personal attention, the personal attention that they actually wanted by dissing Jay-Z in the first place. So in this way, Jay-Z was able to maintain his elevated status while at the same time addressing the issue, while at the same time not giving that person any attention nor allowing them to elevate their status, because he would never say their name. This requires a certain level of discipline. It requires a certain level of a little bit of internal serenity, I guess. I think that's the best term to describe it. You got to be calm enough within yourself and disciplined enough within yourself that even when someone's attacking you, you don't have to play the game on their level. You don't have to play on their terrain. As Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, when you know the terrain and you know the enemy, in 100 battles, you will never be in peril. But if you don't know the terrain, now you're making it kind of a 50-50 situation, because now you're playing the game on somebody else's level. So a tool of discipline here is, and staying on message here, is making sure that you keep the game, whatever your game is, on a terrain that works best for your game. All right, a fish is an expert in water. Outside of water, not so much. So if a fish wants to do battle, the fish should lure you into the ocean, not let you lure it onto the ground, because then it's not going to be as fair of a fight. It's actually not going to be a fair fight either way. But the fish wants to bring you into the ocean, you want to bring the fish onto the sand. Either way, somebody's going to have the advantage. Your job is to work things to keep the advantage on your side. Who and what you pay attention to, understand you are putting yourself on their level. If you pay attention to a petty thing, then you become a petty person. You pay attention to a petty individual, then in that moment, you are the petty person. As they say, don't argue with fools, because from a distance, people cannot tell who was the fool and who was the wise man. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, how to play your game. Leverage everything back to your core message. Everything. Positive things, negative things. You always want to bring everything back to your core message to, again, keep people playing your game, whatever your game happens to be. Now, when you know what your game is, anything that happens, you can use it to pull everything back to you. You can pull everything back to the conversation being about your main thing, your main message, or whatever it is you want people to understand. This is why you have to know what your game is. You have to know what you want people to get, so you can always bring stuff back. For example, on this show, people ask me, Dre, how do you keep coming up? How do you come up with content every day? We got nearly 2,000 episodes of this Work on Your Game show. Is because I have learned how to leverage everything that I come across, everything I read, see, hear, touch, taste, experience, even if it's from somebody else, a secondhand, third-party experience of someone else's experience. I can leverage it back to the Work on Your Game philosophy. I can figure out a way to make this come back to what I want to talk about here at Work on Your Game. So I'm always leveraging everything because I understand what my game is. And it's the same thing that you can do when you know what your game is. You get good enough at knowing your game, you can always find the angle that you can take anything that occurs and make it work for you. 50 Cent, who I talked about in my Virtual Mentors episode. Let me tell you what episode that was. That was episode number 316. 50 Cent Virtual Mentors. He said the following. He said this in his book, The 50th Law, which is one of my favorite books that he co-authored with Robert Greene. Quote, "Every negative is a positive. The bad things that happen to me, I somehow make them good. That means you can't do anything to hurt me." Close quote. That is in essence explaining exactly what I'm saying here, that no matter what happens, positive or negative, you figure out a way to make it work in your favor. My game, as I explained, is work on your game. Any experience, any idea, anything I hear, anything I see, whether it's through my personal direct experience or I notice someone else going through that experience, I can bring it back to work on your game because I know my game and I know the angles from which I can approach anything. And this is what I'm suggesting that you do so that you can always stay playing your game. So let's recap today's class, which is how to play your game. We all get distracted very easily and often in this world by looking at everybody else's game. But today we're going to talk about how you can play yours and only yours. Number one, have a strategy in place and follow your strategy. See episode 1921 for the 3-step framework of achievement. When you have a strategy to follow, you become less prone to shiny information syndrome because you're already following your own plan and you aren't so prone to looking around at what everybody else is doing. Just like if you're in a relationship and a pretty guy or girl walks by, you can appreciate them, but it doesn't mean you're going to drop everything and go chase after them. Point number two, stay on message. Michael Jordan said, I can talk trash while remaining focused on what the team needs from me, while my opponents, when they talk trash to me, they start focusing on me and they stop focusing on what the team actually needs. That Donald Trump, he would get too focused on other people who are much less in status than him, and he would let them actually become famous off of his name, when what he could have better did was what Jay-Z did, which is respond to his detractors, but in such a way that he remained elevated, they remained anonymous, and he handled the situation all at the same time. Killed 3 with 1 blow. Leave them as nobodies to maintain your elevated status. Anything you pay attention to, you're putting yourself on their level. Point number 3, leverage everything, positive and negative, back to your core message. You have to know your game in order to know how to leverage things back to your core message. As 50 Cent said, every negative is a positive. When bad things happen to me, I can make them good. That means nothing you do can actually hurt me, because everything that happens, I can bring it back to my game. Personally, my game is work on your game. I can take any experience, idea, or observation and leverage it back to what I want to do and what I want to talk about and how I want to use it, simply because I know my game and I know my angles. So follow these instructions here to make sure your game is on point and you stay focused on it. That's how it stays on point. Now, anyone who's interested in making sure you have your strategy in place, that you have the accountability in place, that you are turning everything that happens to you into something that actually works in your favor, then you might be a great candidate to be coached by me in my 3rd day mastermind. The only way to get into that is you have to hop on a Zoom call with me, free of charge, by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com/call, CALL. The link is down below in the description, or just click the button at workonyourgameuniversity.com that says join the mastermind. You'll fill out a quick form. We'll hop on a Zoom call. I'll find out where you're at, where you want to go, how I could possibly help you get there, and then we'll go from there. Send me a text for anyone else who is listening who wants to get my daily motivation text, which I send out every morning to everybody's phone directly, completely free of charge. My number is 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.